Chapter 3. How Columbus Came to the Caribbean. Columbus was born near the Mediterranean seaport of Genoa. As a boy, he liked to wander along the quays, watching the ships and talking to the sailors. When he was 14, he made his first voyage. Later, like many other sailors, he went to live in Portugal, where he studied maps and read copies of old Greek books in which it was stated that the world was round like a ball, not flat as so many people thought. The Greeks and Romans believed that the Fortunate Islands lay far out in the sea to the west of Europe. They were sometimes called Antilia. Columbus talked to sailors who had made voyages to the Canary Islands and Madeira, and from what they told him, he felt sure that there was land on the other side of the Atlantic. That land, he decided, must be part of the Indies. Columbus went to the King of Portugal and asked for help to buy ships and hire men so that he might seek a way to India by sailing westward. The king himself was interested in the idea, but his chief men sneered at it. "Reach the east by sailing westward," they said. "Only a madman would think of such a plan." And they persuaded the king to refuse to help Columbus. Columbus then went to Spain to lay his plan before the king and queen of Spain, while he sent his brother to England to try to get help from the English king, Henry VII. Weeks, months, years passed. No one helped from Spain or England, and Columbus was about to leave Spain to try his luck in France when a messenger brought the glad news that Queen Isabella, the wife of the Spanish king, had agreed to help Columbus, even if she had to sell her royal jewels to raise the money. At last, Columbus had his wish. He was given 3 little ships, the Santa Maria, the Pinta, and the Nina. The ships lay in the harbor of Palos, near Cadiz, but it was not easy to find sailors to man the vessels. They were afraid to join what seemed a mad, hopeless venture. At last, he was forced to take criminals, men released from the prisons on condition that they sailed on one of Columbus's ships. The 3 ships left Palos on August 3rd, 1492. The crews of the vessels wept as the coasts of Spain were left behind. Then they became sullen and were always finding some new cause for terror. The compass needle was said to behave strangely. Surely that meant that they were nearing the edge of the world and would soon be tumbling into space. The wind was blowing the ships along now, but how could they hope to get back to Spain with the wind against them? Then they came to the great mass of floating seaweed, now known as the Saragossa Sea. They had never seen anything like this before. "Throw Columbus overboard," cried some of the men. "Hang him," cried others. "Let us turn back to Spain before we perish." It took all Columbus's powers of coaxing and commanding to get the men to sail on over what seemed to be an endless ocean. Once the lookout man raised the cry, "Land ahead!" But alas, it was only a bank of cloud. 2 months had passed since the ships had left Palos. The crews were becoming dangerous, so Columbus agreed to turn back if within 3 days they did not sight land. He also offered a large reward for the first man to see land. The 3 days were passing, but Columbus did not lose hope. He noticed birds flying around the masts, birds that were never seen far out at sea. River weeds floated by, and also a piece of a thorn bush with fresh red berries. A sailor fished up a piece of wood that had been carved by a human hand. On October 11th, the seas were running high. But in the moonlight, the dim outline of a shore was seen. Sails were lowered and the ships lay to until dawn. Then the green shores of a beautiful island were seen. A few hours later, Columbus and his captains landed. Having knelt and thanked God for bringing them safely over the ocean, Columbus set up the royal banner and took possession of the island in the name of King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella of Spain. He called the island San Salvador, which is Spanish for Holy Savior. While all this was being done, the brown-skinned inhabitants watched from the shelter of trees and bushes. Columbus had landed on one of the Bahama Islands, but he thought he had reached the islands off Eastern Asia, a part of the Indies he was seeking. He called that island and others which he visited before returning to Spain, the Indies, and spoke of the Arawaks and Caribs as Indians. Although the islands lie off the east coast of America, we still call them the West Indies in order not to confuse them with the real Indies in Asia. And the native peoples of America are still called Indians, though they have nothing to do with India. Columbus is thought to have landed on the western side of the island, now called Watlings Island. He found the people very friendly. Some swam out to the ships, others came in their dugout canoes. They brought parrots to exchange for glass beads. Columbus wrote of these Bahamian Arawaks, who were called Lucayans. They were so friendly that it was wonderful. They were well built with very handsome bodies and very good faces. They carried no arms and did not know that a sword was sharp. He speaks of the willingness of the islanders to show the sailors where to find water and how they themselves brought barrels full to the vessel and were greatly rejoiced to give us pleasure. The men who went ashore for water told that the houses of the Indians were very well swept and clean, their beds and coverings being of things like nets of cotton. Columbus noticed that many of them wore small ornaments of gold. He was told by signs that away to the southwest was a land where the king had much gold. Columbus visited other islands, one which the natives called Cuba, he thought must be Cipango, as Japan was then called. Another island reminded him of Spain, so we called it Hispaniola, or Little Spain, but the native name was Haiti. On Hispaniola, Columbus ordered a fort to be built and left 38 of his men to guard it while he returned to Spain. He took with him some parrots and other gaily colored birds, and also 6 Arawaks. After a stormy voyage, he reached Palos, the Spanish port from which he had sailed 7 months earlier. He was given a grand reception, and the Spanish king and queen at once ordered a large fleet to be built in which Columbus would sail on further voyages to the new lands.